Hello grade 7 and welcome back to Math Learning, and I'm glad to see you all again watching this video. So our topic for this moment is all about the irrational numbers, which we're going to focus on approximating square root of a number. So our learning competencies are determines between what two integers the square root of a number is, estimate the square root of a whole number to the nearest hundredth or to the nearest hundred, and plot irrational numbers on a number line. So our learning outcomes will be, so at the end of the lesson, you will be able to determine between what two integers the square root of a number is, approximate the square root of irrational numbers, and plot rational and irrational numbers in a number line. So, before we start, let us answer this maze or the square root maze. So, paano kaya tayo makakapunta dito sa end ng maze na to? So, for us to be able to find the correct way for us to get this finish line or this finish end, paano kaya natin ito gagawin? So, for us, we need to determine the square root of these numbers. So let's start with this one. What is the square root of 144? 144 or the square root of 144 is 12. So pupunta tayo dito. Next, what is the square root of 225? The square root of 225 is 25. And
now, nandito na tayo sa square root of 36. And we know that the square root of 36 is 6 because 6 times 6 is equal to 36. Now, how about the square root of 81? The square root of 81 will result to 9. And what is the square root of 25? The square root of 25 is 5.
And what is the square root of 169? What do you think is the answer? Say. Okay, you're correct. The answer is 13. So we'll proceed to this one. And now, what is the square root of 100? Okay, very good. So we have 10. So ngayon, nandito na tayo sa square root of 9. What will be the result if we're going to find the square root of 9? Yes, you're correct. We have 3. Now, nandito na tayo. Malapit na tayo. Ano po? So what is the square root of 25? Okay, very good. We have 5. And then, what is the square root of 1? Okay, very good. We have 1. And then, what is the square root of 0? Okay, the square root of 0 is not 1, but we have 0 right here. And now, meron tayong square root of 64. What will be the square root of 64? Not 32. And at also 0. So, we have 8. The square root of 64 is 8. Next, we have 121. So, we have, hindi tayo pupunta dito sa 12 at the result will be the square root of 121 is 11. So, nandito na tayo sa end ng maze. So, therefore, makakapunta tayo dito sa end kapag alam natin hanapin ang square root of a number. So, very good, grade 7. Okay, now grade 7. Since you're already equipped with finding the square root or principal square root of a number or of a perfect square or a non-perfect square. So let's proceed in this topic. We need to determine the square root of a number between two consecutive integers. Now, classifying perfect squares and non-perfect squares is very important to master in order to analyze mathematical concepts, especially in finding the two consecutive integers where the square root of a number lies. So let's analyze and study the given below. So here are the numbers from 1 to 625 square roots of perfect squares. So these are the perfect squares from 1 to 625. Ano po? So the square root of these numbers are result to this one, 1 to 25. Ano po? So, for example, we had the square root of 16, the result, or we have this principal square root of 16, we have, or the principal square root of 16 is 4. And so on, and up to the 625, the square root of that is 25. So now, let's begin. Between which two consecutive integers does each number lie? So let's start with square root of 45. Since we already know that square root of 45 is not a perfect square, so therefore it is a non-perfect square. So saan kaya siya natin matatagpuan ang square root of 45? So meaning to say, we need to know these numbers or these two integers. So question mark yan. So dito natin matatagpuan yung 40 or the square root of 45. Ano kaya yung number na nandyan? So for us to determine that, kailangan natin hanapin kung saan ba matatagpuan ang square root of 45. So hanapin natin, dito. Dito po natin siya matatagpuan in between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. So therefore, the next step that we need to do is to get that square root of 36. So, kunin natin square root of 36. Then, eto, square root of 45, our given. And also, the square root of 49. Next, anong sunod natin na gagawin dyan? The next step that we need to do is to compare these three numbers. So, meaning to say, the square root of 45 is in between of the square root of 36 and then the square root of 49. This expression is read as the square root of 45 is in between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. And after that, kailangan natin i-extract yung square root of 36 and square root of 49 para malaman natin kung saan ba talaga malulocate yung square root of 41 or 45 rather. So we have the square root of 36 is already here. So we have 6. We have positive 6, or the principal square root of 6 is positive 6. And then copy this one, then copy square root of 45. And then saan kaya natin matatagpuan ang square root, or what is the square root of 49? So meron na po tayo dito. We have 7. So therefore, the answer will be this one na po. Meaning to say, the square root of 45 lies between 6 and 7, or between the integer 6 and 7. Ito po yung sagot, ano po. So, square root of 45 lies in between 6 and 7. So this will be our answer. Next, the square root of 300. So we all know that square root of 300 is not a perfect square. So hindi tayo magkakaroon ng isang number na kapag multiply natin sa sarili niya, is ang result is square root of 30. So how are we going to deal with this number? So aalamin natin kung saan natin matatagpuan ang square root of 300 dito sa first 1 to 25 result of squaring a perfect square. So 300, so nandito po siya 300. Okay, dito po natin matatagpuan. Ano po? Meaning to say, square root of 300.
Square root of 300 lies in between the square root of 289 and then the square root of 324.
And then what is the next step? The next step is we need to extract this square root of 289. So what is the square root of 289? So we have 17. So we put 17 and then copy that one, square root of 300, and then copy. Then what is the square root of 324? So we have already here. So we have 18. So therefore, our answer is the square root of 300 lies in between 17, and 18. That will be our answer, as simple as that. Next, how about the square root of 405?
Saan kaya natin siya matatagpuan? Ano po? So, ang gagawin po natin, we're just going to look at the table. So, we have 405, the square root of 405. So, saan kaya? So, we have 405. So, meaning to say, meron tayo dito, kukunin natin to because this is already 400. And the next to that is 441. So, meaning to say, the square root of 405 lies in between the square root of 400 and the square root of 441. Ano po? Next step natin is to extract or kukunin natin yung the square root of 400. The square root of 400 is already here. We have 20. And then copy the square root of 405 rather. And we have the square root of 441 is no other than 21.
So therefore, our answer to this one is 405, or the square root of 405 is lies between this 20 and 21, or lies in between the integer of 20 and 21. So that will be our final answer. Next, how about this square root of 30? So I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Sige nga, kayo nga. The answer will be the square root of 30 is lie between 5 and 6. So meron tayong ganito, ano po? And we need to find the square root of 25. It's already here. We have 5. And then the square root of 30, copy. And then the square root of 36 is 6. So therefore, our answer is this one. Ano po? Square root of 30 lies in between 5 and 6. 5 and 6 is an integer. So that ends our topic for determining the square root of a number between two consecutive integers. Okay, grade 7 or Kamat Learning. Dito naman tayo sa approximating the square root. Since alam na natin kung saan sila matatagpuan, yung non-perfect squares is matatagpuan natin between two integers. So ngayon, alamin natin or mag-approximate tayo ng square root. Ano po, when we say approximate, kailangan natin i-estimate. So approximation or approximation is the method or process of estimating the solution of irrational and rational numbers. So in our daily living, lagi tayong gumagamit ng approximation or estimation, right? So ngayon, gamitin natin in approximating the square root of a number. So for us to be able to find the approximate or the estimated value of the square root of a number, meron tayong steps na kailangan na alamin. So para makuha natin yung tamang sagot, we just need to follow certain steps. Ano po? So instruction. Let's proceed. So our instruction, so fill the empty spaces below to approximate the square root of 3 to the nearest hundredths. And also you can use calculator for steps number 3 and step number 4. Ano po? So ang hanapin daw natin yung approximate value ng square root of 3. So let's begin. The first step is to get the approximate value of a radical expression to the nearest hundredths. We need to follow this step. So the first one is kailangan natin alamin kung saan ba natin matatagpuan ang square root of 3. Ano po? So let's start with this one. We know that square root of 3 is not a perfect square. So kailangan lang natin ma-memorize dapat yung table of the square root of a number. So at first, square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of next to that is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Ano po? And next to that is the square root of 9 will result to 3. Now, saan kaya natin matatagpuan ang square root of 3? So we all know that square root of 3 lies here between 1 and 2. Ano po? So therefore, the square root of 3 lies between square root of 1 and square root of 4. Ano po? So, or can be written as this one. Ano po? Okay, this can be read as the square root of 3 lies between the square root of 1 and square root of 4. So step 2. So since we all know that the square root of 3 lies between square root of 1 and square root of 4, kailangan natin i-extract yung principal root or principal root natin. Ano po? Pag sinabi natin principal root, these are the positive result of the square root of a number. So we have square root of 1 is 1. So right here, 1. And then the square root of 4 is 2. So therefore, square root of 3 lies between these two integers, 1 and 2. So tapos na tayo sa step 1, tapos na din tayo sa step 2. Now, next is step number 3. So based on the extracted roots, list at least 4 estimated values to the nearest tenth. So tenths muna tayo. Ano po? And then square each estimated value. When we say square each estimated value, we need to multiply that value to itself. Ano po? Written as radicand, then get the radicands where the given radical expression lies in between. So kukuha ako ng 4 numbers. So I'm going to use kahit anong numbers pwede nating kunin. Ano po? So I will start with this 1. So I'll begin with 1.5.
Para mas malapit, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and 1.8. So meron na tayong 4 na number. Ano po?
And after that 1, ito yung between. Ano po? So kung napapansin nyo, ito yung 1 sa number line. At ito yung 2 sa number line. At yung square root of 3 is nandito sa gitna. At hindi natin alam kung ano yung nandito. So kukunin natin yan. Ano po? So 1.5. The first estimated value is this one. So anong gagawin natin? Ilalagay natin yung 1.5 sa loob ng radicand. So we have 1.5, then i-square down natin, and then what will be the result of that? So for us to be able to find that result, kailangan natin i-multiply yung 1.5 to itself. So we have 1.5
times 1.5 or 1 and 5 hundredths. 1 and 5 tenths. So we have 5 times 5, 25. Then 5 times 1 is 1 plus 2, that is 7. 1 times 5, 5, and then 1. Then 7 plus 5 is 12. Then 2. So we have, since meron tayong decimal dyan, so I'm going to put the decimal point here.
So meaning to say, the result is 2.25. So this one, the result is 1.5. The square root of 1.5 raised to 2 is equal to 2.25. So we are done with our first estimation. Next natin na gagamitin is 1.6. So 1.6, square root natin 1.6. Sa loob 1.6, and we need to square. Ano po? I-multiply natin yung 1.6 to itself 2 times.
And the result of that is 1.6 times 1.6 is 6 times 6, 36. And we have, you can also use your calculator for fast calculation. And then 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3, we have 9. Then also we have this one, 6. And 9 times 6, 9 plus 6 is 15. So we have 2.56. We have 2.56. So we have 2.56.
So meaning to say, the square root of 1.6 raised to 2 is equal to the square root of 2.56. So we are done with our first 2 estimation. Next, we have 1.7. So the square root of 1.7
raised to 2 is equal to 1.7 times 1.7. We have 7 times 7, 49. And then 7 times 4, 7 times 1 is 7 plus 4, that is 11. 1 times 7, 7, 1 times 1 is 1. So we have 2.89. So I have the result 2.89. So we have the square root of 1.7 raised to 2 is equal to 2.89.
Next, last estimation. So kung napapansin nyo, we are getting closer to the square root of 3. Ano po?
So next we have 1.8. 1.8, then square natin yan inside the radical. So we have 1.8. Ganyan. And then, ano kaya yung magiging result if we're going to multiply 1.8 by itself? So 1.8 times 1.8. Tingnan natin yung result. 8 times 8 is 64. Then 8 times 1 is 1 plus 6, that is 14. Then we have 1 times 8 is 8. Then 1 times 1 is 1. So we have the result of 4 dito. We have the result of 324. And as you can see, 3.24 rather, because meron tayong decimal. So we have 3 and 24 hundredths.
So kung napapansin nyo class, yung 3.24 or 1.8 is lampas na po siya, or it is much higher than the square root of 3. So meaning to say, ang kukunin natin is, since nakita natin na yung the square root of 2.89 and then the square root of 3.24, nakita natin na etong gitna, meaning to say, nandyan po natin matatagpuan yung square root of 3. It is because 2.89 is much malapit, or the square root of 2.29 is nearest to the square root of 3 than this 3.24. So meaning to say, square root of 3 is nasa gitna ng 1.7 and 1.8. Ano po? So meaning to say, we're going to use this 1.7 and 1.8 to our next estimation. So ano mangyayari doon sa first two? Ano mangyayari dito sa dalawa? To say, hindi siya, or mas malayo siya sa square root of 3, so therefore hindi na natin siya kukunin. Ano po? Ang kukunin na natin is yung 1.7 to 1.8. Ano po? So anong gagawin natin dyan? From 1.7, kukuha tayo, since nearest tens ito, kukuha naman tayo ng panibagong nearest hundredths. So, dito na tayo sa step number 4. Para mas malapit tayo, or para mas malapit sa approximation natin or estimation, we're going to use, since 1.7 yung mas malapit sa square root of 3. Ano po? So, gagamitin natin yung 1.7. Since nearest tens ito, dadagdagan lang natin ng 1.71 kasi nearest hundreds na tayo. Ano po? So, for further estimation, following the same pattern as the previous step, kailangan natin mag-create o gumawa ng another list of estimated values. So, but this time, para mas malapit sa nearest hundreds, or para mas malapit sa hundreds, in order to obtain the closest or the closer estimated value of the root, kailangan natin gawin ito. Ano po? So, we have to select 4. At least 4 estimations. Ano po? So, from 1.7 to 1. So, meron na tayong 4. So, etong 1.8, hindi na po natin siya kukunin. Also, ano po? Pero, nasa gitna po ng 1.7 and 1.8. Ito, 1.7 and 1.8, yung square root of 3. So, ano next natin na gagawin? Same process. We need to take this 1.71 or 1 and 71 hundredths, and then ilagay natin siya dito sa loob ng radical, and then squaring this one, and then hanapin natin yung result. So how are we going to find the result? By simply multiplication. So we have 1.71, pwede kayong gumamit ng calculator, times 1.71. The result of that is 2.9241. Ano po? Square root of 1.71 raised to 2 is equal to the square root of 2.9241. Next, dito na tayo sa pangalawa, 1.72. So we have 1.72. Lagay natin siya sa loob ng radical. 1.72 1.72 and then square natin. The result of that will be 1.72 times 1.72. Gamit na kayo ng calculator. So we have
2 times 2 is 4, 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, 1 we have 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. 7 times 2, 40. 7 times 7 is 49 plus 1, 50. Then 1 times 7 is 7 plus 5 is 12. Next we have 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 7 is 7. Then 1. Then add, we have 4, this one 8, we have 5, we have 9, and we have 2. And then count the number of decimal places we have 4, so we have this point.
So therefore, the result of the square root of 1.71 raised to 2 is equal to the square root of 2.9, .5, 8, and 4. So, ganyan po. Next, dito, sa 1.73 naman tayo. So, 1.73, so, lagay natin siya sa loob, 1.73
raised to 2, and the result of that will be 1.73 times 1.73. We have 3 times 3, 9, 7 times 3 is 21, then 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2, 5, then we have 7 times 3 is 21, then 7 times 7 is 49 plus 2, 51. Then we have 7 times 1 is 7 plus 5 is 12. Then 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 7, 7. 1 times 1 is 1. Then add. We have 9, 2, 9, 9, 2.
Therefore, we have the result of... So the answer for this part is 1.73 raised to 2 is equal to the square root of 2.9929. Last, we have 1.74. 4 times 4 is 16.
Okay, 1, we have 7 times 4 is 28 plus 1, 29. And 4 times 1 is 4 plus 8 plus 2, that is 6. 7 times 4 is 8. And we have 7 times 7 is 49 plus 2, 51. Okay, 5, so we have 7 times 1 is 7 plus 5, that is 12. Next, we have 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 7 is 7, 1 times 1 is 1. We have to add 6. 17, 12, there's 1, we have 10, we have 3.
So the result will be, so meaning to say, we have the result of 3.0276. So meaning to say, the square root of 1.74 raised to 2 is equals to the square root of 3.0276. Ano po? So now, tingnan na natin yung result natin. After we estimate, tingnan na natin kung alin ba ang mas malapit sa square root of 3. So kunin na natin itong mga result na nakuha natin sa A, sa B, B, C, and then D. Ano po? So ilagay natin siya dito. These are the result, ano po, in multiplying these numbers, these nearest hundreds numbers to itself or by itself. Ano po? So, yan na yung gagamitin natin. Tingnan natin yung result natin. Ano po? Kung alin ba yung mas malapit dun sa square root of 3. So, nandito na po siya. So, let's analyze. Ano po? Analyze natin yung results. So, alin kaya yung mas malapit sa square root of 3. So, kung napapansin natin, dito, hindi. Ano po? So, wala dito. Wala dito sa between 1.71 and 1.72. Or wala din dito sa 1.72 and 1.73. It is because wala naman tayong nakikitang 3. Ano po? And tingnan natin dito sa last result. So, we have 1.73 multiplying by itself. The result is 2.9929. And also, multiplying by itself, this 1.74, we have the result of 3.0276. Kung napapansin nyo, meron na tayong 3 dito. So, meaning to say, in this part, eto, sa part na to, sa gitna, ano po? Sa gitna ng 1.73 and 1.74, squaring that numbers, the result, eto, sa gitna. Okay, sa gitna po ng 1.73 and 1.74, meaning to say, nandun po papasok si square root of 3. Ano po? So, meaning to say, etong 1.74 is hindi na natin siya kukunin at ang malapit na number sa square root of 3 or mas malapit na number is eto. Ano po? So, meaning to say, the square root of this number is 1.73 or the square root of 2.9929 is equal to 1.73 because 1.73 times 1.73 is 2.9929. So, we need to finalize our result. Since meron na tayong nakuha na result which is 2.99 is equal to, or the principal root of 2.9929 is 1.73. So therefore, we need to write the result in this part. So meaning to say, isulat na natin po siya dito. So since 2.9929 is closer to the square root of 3 than the square root of 3.0276. So, ano yung kukunin natin? Siyempre, eto. Ano po? So, meaning to say po, the square root of 2.9929 is almost closer to, or this symbol is read as is almost closer to. Ano po? So, the square root of 2.9929 is almost closer to the square root of 3. So, therefore, the approximate or the approximated value of square root of 3 into the nearest hundredths is 1.73. So, the answer will be 1.73 or 1 and 73 hundredths. So, that is the step, or yan po yung mga step on how to find or how to approximate the non-perfect square, or yan po yung mga steps on how to approximate the value of the square root of a number dealing with irrational number. Ano po? So kung hindi nyo po nakuha, so pwede nyo balikan yung steps, ano po, from the top until the end. Ano po? So we're going to plot rational and rational numbers on a number line. Since alam nyo na kung paano mag-approximate ng square root of a number, and alam na natin kung saan sila matatagpuan in between two integers, so pwede na tayo mag-plot. So gamitin na natin yung ideas natin or knowledge natin to plot these irrational and rational numbers in this number line. How are we going to plot these numbers? Example, we have 4, 3, the square root of 20, and the square root of 14 on a number line. So, ang una natin gagawin is to plot these 4 and 3 on a number line. So, saan natin matatagpuan yung 4 and 3? So, syempre, dito natin siya matatagpuan. Since that is, or since 4 is an integer, so automatic dito po natin siya matatagpuan. And also yung 3, dito rin natin po siya matatagpuan. And the only problem is this, the square root of 20 and square root of 14. So paano kaya yan? So unahin muna natin yung square root of 20. So how are we going to deal with that, square root of 20?
So we have the square root of 20. So using this table, kailangan natin alamin kung saan ba matatagpuan yung square root of 20. So square root of 20 lies okay, in between 4 and 5. Ano po? So meaning to say, square root of 20 lies between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. Ano po? And extract natin yung 16, the square root of 16, or the principal root of 16 is 4. That is also the principal root of 25 is 5. So therefore, square root of 20 lie between this 4 and 5. So nandyan po siya. So nandito po yung square root of 20. At dito naman yung 4 at dito naman yung 3. Now, how about the square root of 14? Saan kaya natin matatagpuan si square root of 14? So we're just going to look at this table. So we have square root of 14. So meaning to say, nandito po siya sa gitna ng 3 and 4. So we have square root of 14 lies between 3 and 4. So meaning to say, hanapin natin sa number line yung 3 and 4. So we have this one. Nasa gitna po siya ng 3 and 4. So therefore, ito po si square root of 14.
And that ends our discussion